So welcome everyone to the opening session of the Autumn 22 First Wednesday series. You're all very welcome. My name is Aga. I'm a communications officer in Kolof. And for those of you who are new to the series, I wanted to let you know that the series we've been running First Wednesdays for about 20 years. So this is one of many events that we've had in this 20 years. And at each session, you know, our goal is to bring global issues to our local reality, and also link local to global, global to local, to deepen your perspective, to show you views of people who you might not usually hear from. And also in each session, we try to bring participants from Ireland, but also from Global South, and Zoom has been very beneficial to it because, you know, we were able in the past to invite really interesting speakers from very underrepresented communities, speaking about, you know, topics that usually we won't be able to hear about in Ireland. So just to let you know as well that this event is supported financially by Concert Worldwide, which we are really grateful for. And also we are really delighted to have partnership with Maynooth University Department of International Development, who is supporting us, who are our long-standing partner now in the sessions. And Niv here, Niv Rooney, is from the Department of International Development and will be our host. And those of you who are here before, you know, probably know how great she is moderating this session. So I will also let you know that please use the chat to ask questions, and I will ask you to send messages or comments to Julia, who is here as Julia Q&A, and she will pass it on to our speakers. And just wanted to let you know that we were supposed to have a fourth speaker today here, Lorraine from Muslim Sisters of Air, but unfortunately she got sick, so she won't be joining us tonight. And we wish her a speedy recovery. I think that's all from me. I will also say a few words at the end with some, you know, some follow-up information. And now I will also feel free to join the chat. We will use the hashtag FirstWeds, and you know, so if you have any comments, you can put them there as well, just to you know, bring the conversation beyond this room. And this session will be available probably tomorrow or on Friday on YouTube, just in case you have to leave early. And I will share with you also the recording afterwards. So without further ado, I'm disappearing, and Niv, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Aga. And no pressure, thank you for that as well. Okay, so hi folks, it's great to be back for the First Wednesday Autumn 2022 series. And, you know, as Aga said, we're long-standing partners with Kolof on the First Wednesday series, and the Department of International Development were delighted to continue to support the series. So again, as Aga said, a really warm welcome to our panelists and our participants online, and thanks very much for being here. So the First Wednesday series this autumn is 3 interconnected conversations, again, following what we did last year, and it'll focus on the struggle for democracy. So exploring commonalities in global citizenship and activism. And so that means that this evening and over the next 2 First Wednesdays, we will engage in conversations to explore this with questions such as, how do we consider struggles for justice and equality? Do commonalities in struggle exist across campaigning and activism movements? And what would it mean to consider these struggles as part of a process of acts of global citizenship and democratizing democracy? So to explain a little, the focus for the series was prompted by a recent piece of engaged research carried out by Kolof and Dr. Barry Cannon from Maynooth University Department of Sociology. And that research engaged practitioners from the development sector in an exploration of a range of theoretical perspectives on issues such as struggle, globalization, citizenship, democratization, and democracy. So through the First Wednesday conversations, we hope to explore and better understand theory by connecting with practice. So through stories, ideas, and examples from those currently involved in real world struggles in Ireland and beyond. And so together with our panellists, we'll take a closer look at commonalities in struggle across campaigning and activism movements, and explore what it would mean to consider these struggles as part of a process of acts of global citizenship and democratizing democracy. So what does or would that look like in practical terms? So some theory sees democracy as a process closely connected with liberty and equality, something that's never quite there. It's constantly shifting and changing. And through this series, we look at that and other issues linked to that. So there's 3 events in the autumn series. And so this evening, we focus on struggle as acts of citizenship. In November, my colleague Tom Campbell will moderate the session, and the focus will be on the struggle for the earth. The global is the local. And in December, we'll wrap up the series with my colleague Paul O'Keefe, unpacking commonalities in struggle. No easy feat there, but I'm sure he'll do a great job of that. So bringing it back to the here and now, this evening we're going to focus on struggle as acts of citizenship with a fantastic panel, and thanks very much for being here, folks. So I'm going to introduce the panel now. So we have Bilguunzorig Sukhbaatar. Welcome. I hope I did well on the pronunciation there, Billy.
Yes, you did.
Thank you very much. So Billy has been involved with the Justice for the Undocumented campaign and community as an activist and a leader for the last 4 years. And Billy's originally from Mongolia, and he celebrated getting paperised, I love that phrase, earlier this year through the regularisation scheme. And Billy's leadership in the Mongolian community here in Ireland has encouraged many people to get involved, and he supported people in applying for the recent scheme. And so the Justice for the Undocumented campaign was started in 2010, and 11 years later, they were successful in getting the government to finally open a regularisation scheme for long-term undocumented people living in Ireland. And so congratulations to all involved in the campaign. Next, we have Fia Tubridy. And Fia is an organiser with the Community Action Tenants Union, or CATU in short, and also works with trans harm reduction. I'm focusing on CATU for this evening. For those of you not familiar with CATU, it's a long-established union for people outside of their workplaces. So CATU works to take the basic ideas of membership, collective direct action, and grassroots democracy from where people work to where they live. Fia is co-chair of the Dún Laoghaire CATU branch and an active member of CATU's training and education group. She's also a researcher at Maynooth University and is currently working on a collective research project about the history of community and tenant organising in Ireland and what lessons we can learn from this to build the contemporary housing movement. And we hope Fia will share some more of CATU's experiences with us this evening. And last but not least, we have Mavis Ramazani. And Mavis is a multi-award winner in the area of community, justice, integration and inclusion for her activism and advocacy for the rights of refugees and asylum seekers in Ireland. She's one of the founders of Cooking for Freedom, a group of asylum seeker women in direct provision in Ireland who find joy in cooking. They're raising awareness about the lack of ability for asylum seekers to cook for themselves and their families. Mavis is an advocate for change in how international protection applicants are treated while accommodated at government facilities. Mavis is a refugee community builder on the ground, supporting adults and children by responding to challenges they face while waiting for the decision on their international protection applications. And she's also a single mother of 2 who works as a project officer for the Irish Refugee Council. And I'm wondering where you get the time, Mavis, but you're very, very welcome this evening. So together this evening, Billy, Fia, Mavis and I, and all of you engaging online, will explore struggle as acts of citizenship. So let's put it out there and state this at the outset. There's many different definitions and understandings of what citizenship is. It means different things to different people. There's individual, collective and legal definitions and perspectives, all of which have their place and validity. So for me, citizenship sparks concepts such as community, belonging, democracy, equality, status, rights, but others would disagree, and that's okay. There's no definitive right answer, and we're here to explore and to learn from the stories and experiences of our panellists through their generous sharing of their very practical, very real lived experiences. And so let's get to it. It's enough for me from now. But before we begin, just a reminder to encourage our online participants to join the conversation. So you're an important voice in this evening's conversation. And so I'll invite you to post comments or questions in the chat to Julia Q&A, and we'll give them attention after we've heard from our panellists. So to begin, Mavis, we're going to begin with you this time, if that's okay.
That's okay.
So you're one of the founders of Cooking for Freedom.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the initial idea of Cooking for Freedom and why it's important, personally and as an act of citizenship?
Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And I'm grateful that you have taken your precious time to spend it with us this evening. Food is an important part of our lives, and lack of it, you know, it's a very sad thing to happen in a society. While I was in direct provision, now I have transitioned for direct provision, but I'm still with Cooking for Freedom. When I was in direct provision, we lived in a direct provision that were limited only canteen food. We couldn't cook for ourselves. Now that led to health conditions where myself and my daughter were sick, and as well, I was living in a community that we did not have a safe space to have conversation, looking at how ways we could trust each other. And I knew that if we cooked together, you know, talking about food, it takes conversation to the next level. When we didn't have access to the kitchens, it was very difficult. It was frustrating. So for me, it was, and it still is, a human rights violation. Everyone in Ireland has access to food, but there are people who do not have access to food, not only access to cooking facilities, a space to prepare your own food. When you're an asylum seeker or a refugee, your application could take between a year to 3 years before you leave the system itself. Therefore, you cannot live on canteen food. You cannot live on the same food. It leads also to severe mental health. Already traumatized, you are now being traumatized by the environment and the circumstances and the lack of community that food brings together. So for me, this was personal to me. You know, I couldn't cook for my own child. As a mom, that worried me. And I saw malnutrition. My daughter and I were experiencing poverty. And this was not only affecting me, it was affecting other mothers, individuals, adults within our community. So our trauma was being compounded by this lack of food. At the end of any day, you want to come home and eat food. We all eat rice, but we cook it differently. And that's what I thought to say, we need cooking facilities, a space to prepare our own food. Just preparing itself, it does a lot on your mental health, on your body, on your physical health. And also it connects communities. You know, I grew up in Africa, you know, in South Africa. Ubuntu, you know, being part of a community is a vital part. And I know for years there were different events, rituals that brought people together where people cooked for different reasons, whether it's a baby just been, you know, somebody just gave birth, but food has always been at the center of communities where you get a space to chat, to resolve matters. And this in Ireland shocked me. We were at a place where a government is paying, you know, we're given accommodation, but there was no space for us to cook for ourselves. And it was having a very severe negative impact on both adults and children. And from there, discussions started and other ways came into play. We were offered spaces, and then Cooking for Freedom was then born that way. You know, it was born from a place of pain, a need for community, a need to integrate. At the same time, you are here in a foreign country as a refugee, as a person seeking asylum. You need others, you need other communities to connect with. How are we going to connect with them when we were so isolated? We're not part of a community. Therefore, you know, through food, having Cooking for Freedom gave us that. So I'll just stop there for now. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask you just one or two questions just on that? You know, so would I be right in thinking, like, you talked a lot about coming together and about collectives, and also you talked about choice and justice and health, and equality, the right, the freedoms to cook and to prepare your own food and to choose what you eat. But especially you talked about collectives and coming together. Is that what active citizenship is for you? Is it about collectives? Is it about strength in numbers and working together?
Yes, that is that for me, because a united people, you know, builds community, builds stronger community, because there is power in diversity, there's power in unity, in coming together as a collective.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll come back to that a little bit more later on. Now, Billy, we'll come to you next, if that's okay. So could you share with us a little bit about the early days of the Justice for the Undocumented campaign? So how did you get organized, and maybe what key acts of citizenship were important to the success of the campaign?
Thanks for inviting me. So my name is Billy. I'm from the Mongolia originally. Before, can I tell my story? So for the people, you know, so the Mongolian economy is not so good. So I'm looking for the better future, better life. So I came through the England, and that didn't work out. And then I went through the Belfast and came to Ireland, and I become undocumented because I didn't know the visa. I need to get the visa. So, and then I stepped into the Ireland, and I found my job, and I found my apartment. So I become undocumented. That was 6 years ago. And then 2018, I was walking on the street and I saw the sign. It says 50,000 undocumented people in America. And there's a lot of people lived in Ireland. So that struck me, you know. So I went into the Lynn Hotel, the MRCI, Migrants' Rights Center, and Justice for Undocumented. They were doing the postcard action in 2018, right before the St. Patrick's Day. Because what happened is the minister and then also the Minister of Justice, they usually go to before the St. Patrick's Day to meet the American president, to ask him for regularization to the undocumented Irish people in America. So I lived in America, so I was undocumented too. So that is like similar, you know, strike. So I'm here undocumented. So I involved in this action. So that day, 700 undocumented members, they signed it, filled out the postcard, and it says, my name is this, and I'm being here's like that much long, and I'm doing that. That is my the work. So that is the simple and powerful message to the Minister for Justice. So that postcard action, that's how I got involved in the beginning. Early days, it's the JFU campaign. They made a lot of the actions. And that after that, we did the survey over 1,000 undocumented workers. And this was brilliant because we were able to show the government, hey, we're here, and we're here to a long time, and Ireland is our home, and we contribute to the community and the economy. We're here raising our kids, you know. And then having the strong evidence was really important to the success of the campaign. And after that, Sharon and myself made a video. It says, live here, work here, belong here. I felt empowered to do this, to take a part, to show my face, not afraid, because I knew I had my community behind me, supports me. And then it was creative and powerful way to tell our story. And this is important when you're trying to highlight the issue in easy way that people and officials can easily understand it. And then the beginning of the 2020, 1,000 of undocumented people take the JFU, took the part in email to all TD action. So we spoke to all the party members and asked that they are include the regularization in their program for the government. And this resulted in a cross-party support for pathway to papers with all mainstream parties, including in their commitments. So the last year, 2021, right before the Christmas, and the government then announced regularization to the undocumented people. So this 2022, this year, January, we got all, started the process, and then a lot of people get their paper stamp 4 within the 2 years, So becoming undocumented, looking for a better life, and becoming undocumented, and then taking action involved in the MRCI and JFU, and with the good people like united, collectiveness, and then become, regularized. And then now have the stamp 4, and after 5 years, I will get my citizenship,
Yeah.
Yay!
Fantastic. Well done. I think a round of applause there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story, and it's an amazing fight to get there. Something struck me in what you were saying. You mentioned visibility, becoming visible.
Yes.
was something that you mentioned quite a few times there. You talked about the Live, Work, Belong campaign and about the visibility around that. And it was a question that came into my head actually when you were talking about the postcard action.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, that's really brave. If you're undocumented, it must have been quite frightening to put your name, and to put personal details on a postcard. I know it's not your face and it's not, necessarily your address and everything, but you're still making yourself visible on a postcard. Was that frightening? Were you fearful in doing that?
No, in the beginning it was, yes. And then after, when we explained the situation to the people and they understand it easily, they accept it easily.
Yeah.
And then it was undocumented, and I've been here that many years, and I'm doing this job, and this was the simple and powerful message to the government. There's like 700 postcards in one day. Can you imagine? What to the one person?
That'll get your attention.
Yes.
And I think, another thing that strikes me is, when one person is brave, it's easier for 10 people or 70 people or 100 people to become a little bit braver too.
Yes.
The other thing that you mentioned was do you think it was important to have allies in political parties, TDs, and in other organizations? Did that help the campaign?
Absolutely. And we had the strategic meeting every 2 weeks on the Justice for Undocumented, and people gathered together and then getting the information. And we had the plan A, B, C. So, and first we are talk to the unions and any organization that supports us, and we talk to them and explain to our struggle, and then we invite them to our campaign. And this was really important. And then we did this survey, 1,000 undocumented people. That survey shows powerful message. That it's really good result. So we can able to show them the result. Hey, we are here, we live here, and we're raising our kids, and we contributing to our economy and then community, society too. So that's the fact that we can show them. so they can easily to understand it too.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Billy, and we'll come back to that in a minute. We're going to come to you, Fia, now, last but not least, and thanks for your patience, Fia. So CATU have been active for decades, and you've been involved for quite some time. I'm sure not decades, but you've got quite some experience with them. And it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about CATU's history of activism, such as the rent strikes in the early 70s, which I've read little bits about, but I don't know much about. And how you feel stories from the past can offer. What can we learn from these experiences, and how can they help to inform and shape future citizen actions in new and imaginative ways, I suppose?
Thanks for having me on. Just to clarify, unfortunately, CATU has not been around for decades. It's just the past 3 years. So it's a fairly recently established community and tenants union, which was set up approximately 3 years ago, or a bit over 3 years ago. But related to that fact, the project that I'm working on is about, one of the union activities that I'm involved in is doing a kind of collaborative or collective history of the housing struggle in Ireland, and exploring or kind of trying to understand previous mobilizations around housing, including the rent strikes in the early 1970s, which were coordinated by an organization called the National Association of Tenants Organizations, or NATO. The other NATO is the other one often referred to it, or the good NATO. But so I guess I can talk a bit about that project and what we're doing with that. I guess we've started this project about the history of the tenants movement and rent strikes in Ireland, focusing particularly on the wave of rent strikes that occurred between 1970 and 73, where council tenants withheld their rents on a mass scale in protest against high rents, poor housing standards, bad planning, lack of community facilities and council estates, amongst many other familiar sounding issues. So this all coalesced into a statewide rent strike throughout the 26 counties from around November 1972 to August 73. And it's not certain to be it's not possible to be totally certain about numbers, but during this period, in essence, tens of thousands of people were withholding rent at one point or another. And the rent strike ended in success in August 1973, when a deal was negotiated between the government and the National Association of Tenants Organizations, which included rent reductions and recognition of NATO as the official negotiating body for council tenants, which would thus have to be consulted about any future rent increases. So rather than go into detail about the kind of overall history, I could just talk about one kind of story that I think is interesting from an interview that we did during the summer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. So we've been doing interviews with people who were involved in these events, and I'm just going to give a little story, I guess, from an interview with 3 women who are all involved in the rent strikes in Edenmore in North Dublin. So they're all very deeply involved in actions like picketing rent offices and resisting evictions, such as a really dramatic effort by the corporation to evict a rent striking family in Coolock, which became known as the Siege of Cloncassel Court, where over 200 Gardaí tried and failed to evict a rent striking family in the face of mass community resistance. But these women, anyway, in the course of describing their experiences, explained how at a certain point in the rent strike in their area, Dublin Corporation started serving rent strikers with eviction notices. So one of the women, Susan, recalled how she was at home and a council official came along the street knocking on doors, handing out eviction notices to all the women in the houses. But there was one woman on the road who was on the Tenants Association committee, And at the time, there were rumors circulating that members of the Tenant Association Committee were in fact paying the rent under the radar by like posting them in, and to avoid like threats of eviction or so on, while encouraging others to keep up the rent strike. So this was the rumor. So this woman on the committee was horrified to see the council official go past her door, and she ran out and chased him down the street with everyone watching and demanded an eviction notice just like everyone else. So the council official looked around, saw everyone out in their front garden watching what was going on, and said something like, you know, "Oh, madam, please, this is a very serious issue. It should be dealt with sensitively and in private." But the woman insisted again, saying that like she demanded her eviction notice and she wasn't going to have it said that she was crossing the picket and paying her rent when she wasn't. So she won out and was presented with this eviction notice. This is just like a kind of short little story, but I think it illustrates like a few different things in a nice way. Like firstly, like the key role of like women in the rent strike as organizers in lots of different areas. Which was kind of related in some ways to the fact that women were in charge of like household finances and expected to look after the house, but were also like deeply embedded in their communities, I suppose. And then as well, like I think it also illustrates the extent to which the rent strike that we're looking at was almost normalized. So like not an exceptional or very radical act to be participating in some ways. Like getting an eviction notice was to be expected and not a particular source of fear or concern, because like it was understood that there was mass community support and any eviction would be like fiercely resisted, like in the case of Crown Castle Court that I mentioned. And I mean, yeah, there's lots going on in this story. I could talk about it for ages, but like I think it just also kind of highlights like the depth of knowledge and experience amongst like working class communities, which we hope to collect aspects of through the project and like put to good use effectively. And I think like through that story, you've maybe gotten a little bit of a sense of like how it's really inspiring and rewarding to talk to people like this who've got like a lifetime of experience of like fighting in their community or for their community. Like at the end of the same interview with these three women, I asked like, you know, what they learned from their experience of the rent strike. And the first thing one of them, again, I think it was Susan, said was like, if you want anything, you just have to fight for it. Which, yeah, I think is a pretty good message to take away. I can fill in anything else later on, or talk more about Cassie's kind of current organizing rather than just about the historical stuff, but that's the project we're doing at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And my apologies, that was an assumption on my behalf. I thought that Katia was the follow-on from NATO, as you say, the good NATO. Yeah. You mentioned something there. You were saying just towards the end, you said about that, you know, at the time that the campaigning and, you know, the mobilization was normalized and not radical. Do you think we've lost that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think one of the key aspects that I'm really interested in is how like tenants associations around that time were so like part of the fabric of areas and communities, like we're involved in providing like basic services in these areas. Like one short article I came across in the NATO newspaper actually, that really stuck with me was about like the West English Tenants Association and how they ran these like social outings to the beach every weekend, and the average attendance was like 20 double-decker buses or about 2,000 people. So that was like the scale of like their capacity to like organize and do things, you know. And what someone else told me in an interview was that like when you were seeing people all the time like this as part of all these like social activities, it was very easy to talk to them about like politics and rent strikes and the rent. And, you know, it was just like, it was an existing relationship there that this built on.
That's very relevant to something that Mavis said earlier on about building trust, is those creating those spaces and those safe spaces where people can form those relationships, where they can build those networks, where they do trust each other, and taking away that fear, that element of fear, and I suppose becoming visible. I think it's really, really important. There was something else that I suppose that struck me. You said it, you know, these were events, was mass mobilization around the country, you know, and again, it's that collective. It requires that collective. It requires that strength in numbers that's common to all the stories we've heard so far this evening. But I mean, you're doing amazing work, and keep collecting those stories. They're so important, you know, and they are, and as they're not documented, you know, and you know, I wonder why is it that there was such mass collective action back then? Was it because there was less, the gap between those who hadn't wasn't as big, or was it just that there was a hell of a lot more people who hadn't, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like a pretty tricky question. Like one aspect of the answer to that is like the much higher level of like social housing, right? And these were primarily council tenants organizing around high rents in public housing. And you know, they all had like, I guess, a common landlord, a common enemy in that way, and were able to like pinpoint and direct their energies very clearly at that target. Whereas, you know, in the current context, like landlords tend to be more small scale, they're fragmented, so it's harder to organize in that same way. That's one aspect of it. Like, and then, you know, following on from that, there's a whole story about like tenant purchase and privatization of housing and stuff, which has kind of like contributed to like fragmenting those communities. Well, yeah, I think there's definitely more to it, but that's kind of what comes to mind.
Yeah, I think definitely, as somebody who grew up in the 70s, you know, there definitely was, and grew up in a social housing context, there definitely was more social housing than private housing. You know, private housing was something that wasn't the norm. Okay, thanks very much for that, Fia. I'm looking at the time. It goes by so quickly when you're having conversations. I'm going to have a look at the chat because I see there is a couple of questions coming in there. If you just give me 1 second, I see there's a question from Declan. And I think this is directed to you, Mavis, on the wider impact of food and cooking in direct provision places. Do you think it helps when people in these places join the wider community in terms of confidence, etc.?
Yeah, it is very important to have the facilities in direct provision centers and emergency centers, because most of the time we talk about direct provision centers, but we leave behind emergency centers, which are growing in numbers. Yeah. The community need to have access, and also us to have access to community through initiative. This is vital for the well-being of the community and the country, because we are part and parcel of the country. Despite, you know, the status, we are all human beings, we are all parents. So yeah, it's a very, very vital part to have the facilities in the centers and in community, even initiatives that bring people together.
Yeah, and just addressing that element of the question where, you know, and explain to me, because I'm not quite clear on this, in Cooking for Freedom, do you have a space, a private space in the community that you rent and you come together to cook? And is that just with women in direct provision, or is that open to the wider community?
We don't rent the space because we cannot afford. We have free space.
Okay.
We've, you know, there was discussions about the challenges that we are faced with a lack of cooking facilities. So Cooking for Freedom currently has a space. It's in a church, a cooking space where we are given time when it's available. And I organize for families to go in and cook. And if there are people that close to me, because privacy is also an important, and safety, I check all that before I make the connections. When families are in a kitchen preparing their own food, they also have that opportunity to meet individuals, you know, to talk about the challenges that they are facing while going through this international protection process. But yet again, also funding is a challenge for community organization like Cooking for Freedom. Before the lockdown, we had 3 kitchens available. Right now, we have 1 kitchen that is available, and it has been given to us free of charge. And the church also bought the cooking items. We also had 2 other spaces in 2 different community centers. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And it struck me as well, something else when you mentioned about bringing families together is, you know, that cooking as a family and cooking with your kids, you're building life skills. You know, you're teaching your kids how to eat healthily, how to have good nutrition, and building those life skills. And that's another element that's deprived in not having that facility to cook for yourself.
Yes, it is. And remember, the families and children had a home. You know, they used to cook, to eat together. Now they come here, you know, that is taken away from them. It has a negative impact on their mental health and their everyday lives. Now they engage. But when they are out there in the kitchen, we don't cook for anybody. Organize. Here's the stove. Here's a safe space. You cook, you can take on, but you can also sit down, you know, and it is completely violation of human rights and not being able to prepare your own meal. 2 weeks ago, I had a young lady, she's 18. You know, the first thing she prepared for herself was scrambled eggs. And she was telling me, oh my God, Mavis, I miss, she's only about 2 months in the country. Said, I just even miss the scrambled eggs. So that's a very, very important part of us. And it shouldn't be deprived to someone just because you are here seeking international protection.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. We'll pick out, I have another question there. The next question I can see is for Billy. Coming to you, Billy. And I'd like to ask if you found a general level of understanding of being undocumented in Irish society, considering the experiences of undocumented people, Irish people in the USA or not. So did you find a level of understanding here in Ireland because of the correlation with the Irish undocumented in the US? I think you're muted, Billy.
I'm muted. Yeah, sorry. I was in America, and undocumented in America, it's better. They have the better options. But undocumented here in Ireland, we have less options. Even though if someone get stabbed or someone get involved in the crime, they cannot go to the police to report it. In America, you can call 911 straight away. You can report it, and in America, if you're undocumented, you can open up your business, and you can buy your house, you can buy your car, you can open up your account. It's easy. But here in Ireland, in undocumented, you cannot open up your account, you cannot get your PPS, you cannot get your any documents. You know, that's the difference between in America and in Ireland.
Yeah. It's very different.
It is.
Yeah. And what are people's attitudes to you in Ireland? Are people understanding of the fact that you're undocumented?
Most of them,
yeah. Or is it something you hide?
No, most of the people, if I tell them, for example, my Irish friend, my Irish worker, they don't, it's not aware, you know, they don't aware with this. Oh, you're undocumented. How come? You know, some people, they don't know we exist at all.
Yeah, and that's true. You know, a lot of people, there's lack of awareness. And I think what's one of the important things about campaigns and about that visibility that you talk about is bringing these issues to light, is raising awareness, is making people understand the injustices and the inequality that exists out there. I think that's a really important part of it. Thanks for that, Billy. There's one here that's a comment, and that it's a long comment, but it's not, rather than a question, but I'm going to read it out because I think it's important. And I'm not sure who it's from, and I don't think that matters, but I never understood why when you were working and you asked the government to at least transfer you somewhere closer so that you can continue working. However, they will take you and throw you in the middle of nowhere. I got a job and a promotion at work in Dublin, and I was transferred to Monaghan. I sent emails pleading with them at least to consider moving me closer to Dublin, even asked them to give me at least 5 months so that I could pull myself together. Right now, I am currently staying in the hotel where I work because I really want to start over, be independent. It came across as if they don't care about the fact that I want to do something about my life and be a responsible citizen. It's really hard to get a place to stay, but I hope one day I will get something. Being a refugee, asylum seeker doesn't mean that you were useless. And thank you very much for that comment. It's a really, really important point. Not having status doesn't make you less than anything at all. It doesn't make you, it doesn't make you incapacitated. It ties you and it binds your freedoms and your choices, but it shouldn't. And we know, and it's a whole other conversation, that the direct provision system is very much broken, not fit for purpose, and hasn't been for a long time in Ireland. Bear with me 1 second and I'll just scroll down here and see, do I have questions? And actually, in the meantime, I have a question that I wanted to ask Fia, if you don't mind. Just while, and I'll come back to those in a minute. I'm just wondering, I know that you're involved in the training and education elements of the work in CATU, and how important do you think that is to the work of CATU and to active citizenship and struggles more broadly?
Yeah, that's. I was just thinking about that before you asked the question, generally about the existence of like the training and education program within the union, and how, in my experience or my perspective, I guess it's like a really vital aspect of it. Like, I guess prior to being involved in CATU, I was involved, or have been involved, I guess, in a range of other like housing action groups and community similar, I guess, organizations in some ways, but that were less structured and less effective at organizing, in the sense of bringing new people in and enabling them or giving them the skills and confidence to take action themselves. And I would see like a training program or education program as a really vital aspect of that. So like, a huge number of people are affected by the housing crisis and would like to take action, but like kind of like basic organizing skills or knowledge is not kind of easily available. We're not taught how to resist evictions, for instance, or like organize our communities as a priority in schools. And there's like a body of like not breadth of knowledge and experience which has been developed in those fields through like, and which can be gathered through doing things like talking to people who've been involved, or I guess reading, or all those sort of things, training and workshops and so on. But that requires like a certain amount of like effort and resources and structure to organize all those things. So yeah, we'd see it as like a really vital kind of like left political education and training program to like empower people to, as I say, kind of like gain the skills and confidence to take action themselves. So broadening like who can be involved in struggles beyond just like people who are already kind of confident about their knowledge or skills, or the value of their skills and so on, and enabling people who maybe wouldn't see themselves as like able to get involved in those things. sorry, I kind of rambled there a bit, but like I would see it as very closely tied to like organizing in itself as an idea of like bringing more people into a struggle, right?
And I mean, you have structured, you know, in Cash, I get the impression that you have structured education and training, but there's also the informal education, you know, the things that we learn by being part of a collective, by mobilizing together, by speaking to other people, like by events like this, sharing stories. How did we get things done? And I think resistance, yeah, it's something that we don't necessarily know how to do, but I think we're all born with the capacity to resist. And you know, we see a lot of, some children are much better than, we seem to lose that that resistance. You know, I'm not going to do this, I don't want to do this is not fair. We kind of lose it a bit as we get older, but it is there, it's in us all, I think.
Yeah.
And it's supporting each other can help to bring that out, mobilize it. There's another, it's more of a comment, I suppose, for you, Fia, around somebody's asking, I wonder if a reason that there isn't more mass protests nowadays than years before is to do with the increased commercialization of housing, the increased commodification of services. That is, we're all clients now, not people. And I think none of us can argue with that. That's true.
Yeah, like specifically in relation to, you know, the prospects of rent strikes now, you know, it's more difficult to envisage that due to like the increased precarity of like tenants. But I would say that like evictions can and are resisted now. For instance, like in Dunleary at the moment, where I live in my Cashew branch, we're actively resisting a whole, like, or have and are at the moment resisting one particular eviction, which has been an ongoing situation since February. And like with, you know, with sufficient organization and commitment from the people involved, like those things can be overcome, I think. They're not inevitable.
You look at Ireland, look at the referendum that we've passed in the last number of years. Whoever would have thought back in the 70s or 80s that this is the Ireland that we live in today? Absolutely, they can be overcome. It just needs people coming together, I think. I think we have from Paula here, I have I comment, but again, I think it's important that everybody's voice is heard. So I'm going to read out this comment. So Paula says, I think radicalism has been absent from Irish society since the 1980s, but more especially since the 2000s. Complacency and NIMBYism seems to be the dominant attitude. I wonder what the panel thinks about this. Are there societies in Mongolia and South Africa more or less radical? And for Fia, as a proud Northsider, I'm delighted the activism of Northside Dublin in the 70s was acknowledged. Back in the early 70s, Ballymun was quite radical and socialist. It's just good to hear and not surprising. So just back to that question about, you know, what does the panelists think about that complacency and NIMBYism seems to be the dominant attitude, and is societies in Mongolia and South Africa more or less radical than Ireland? You're both muted, by the way. You're all three of you are muted, actually.
Okay, can any of us have a go? Or?
Yeah, yes, that's open to all three of you, yeah.
Okay, I guess it depends on the country or country's history and where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in South Africa, you know, there were many challenges. There was racism, there was oppression from apartheid. You know, we had our freedom in 1994, but we still don't have that freedom. We need to fight in order for us, you know, to find some kind of justice. You know, there's so many inequalities. That spirit of, you know, fighting, not fighting in a bad way, but fighting for our rights, we need to. It's our survival. If we don't, then life will go back. it can be even worse than what it was during apartheid. So when I came here in Ireland, I found that there is a fighting spirit, but people also are afraid to put themselves out there. Behind the scenes, I'll talk about Cooking for Freedom. Cooking for Freedom is supported by individuals within the Irish community, who behind the scenes are doing so much. I'm coordinating with families. I'm on the ground families. They help me with Facebook, navigate my way. So most people prefer, from my own experience, to fight behind the scenes, but you can't. You need to find that strength within, to say, I need to be the face, be my own voice. And somehow that is a challenge. It could be a cultural thing and also a professional where you work. It could be conflict in what you are doing in terms of your profession. You are protecting yourself personally and your profession, but there is that fighting spirit, only very, very calm. And in other instances, yes, individuals come out there and they openly and honestly, support us and also highlight the challenges that they have. All I want to say is Ireland is a democratic country, is an acceptably safe country. The face of Ireland is changing. We need to be united. We come from different backgrounds, have different level of power, of influence. We can tap into that, to make the Irish society even better. We have achieved a lot together. Even the right to work that we have as refugees and asylum seekers, we cannot take all the credit on our own. We had individuals in the Irish community supporting. So there is support out there, but there is also fear. If I put myself out there, maybe I'm the CEO of a company. How is, funders or other people? There's that fear in terms of their positions as well at the same time. But understandably, until you understand that when you are fighting for the right and justice, you are right and you will have support. So that's my own input. Thank you.
Thank you. It's something that's come up over and again from all of you this evening, and particularly from you two, Mavis and Billy, about the strength to step out from behind the scenes, to become visible, to be seen, to be heard, and not just from the community that's experiencing inequality or marginalisation or injustice, but from the wider community. That support is really, really important. It brings me to a question actually that's there for you, Billy, the question is, I wonder how important it was for Billy to be able to speak up, to be visible, to see that his voice mattered when he lived in fear for so long.
Yes, definitely. There is so much fear, but fear it's only us, within us. And then within the MRCI and JFU, we had the really good advisors. And then we take the plan the action and take the action, which is really important. If we're not stepping out and living in the shadow, afraid, and it's not going to happen at all, you will not get your results. And if you're smart enough, and then you get the smart people get together and make a good plan, A, B, C plan, and then take your actions, Yeah.
Thank you for that. Do we have another question for Fia here? I wonder if there's a reason there isn't, no, sorry. I saw another one here. I'm after losing it. Just give me a second. I scrolled up the chat and lost it. Sorry, I've lost it. I'll come back to it in a minute. This is another question for, here it is, sorry. Could you speak a bit more about Cater's work organising tenants today? Besides the inspiration of historical housing movements, what kinds of organising methods does Cater use to overcome the individualised experience of renting in the private rental sector and cultivate a sense of shared experience and collective power?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would love to talk about that. Yeah, I guess we could maybe talk like a little bit about the structure of the organization, which is based around like local branches. So there's a national kind of executive or steering committee, which is comprised of like reps from each of those branches, but they broadly just like manage the administrative aspects of keeping the organization going. Whereas like the key kind of engine of the union is local branches. So as I said, as I think I was introduced as, I'm on the committee of the Dunleary Catchy branch. And then there's branches, I think there's like 15 kind of established branches which have like elected committees and so on around the country. There's 1,700 members overall. And then beyond those kind of established committees, there's like smaller groups that haven't quite got to the stage of like electing a committee. But within those branches, it's up to members to kind of like identify issues that affect them, whether to do with housing or broader kind of like community issues to do with, I guess any kind of like challenge they're facing in the area.
I think we've lost Fia. Give it a second. Is she coming back in? There you are, Fia. We lost her for a second.
Oh, sorry, my internet is not great, I think.
Yeah, your signal just dropped for a second.
Cool. Yeah, so I think, I don't know when you lost me, but I was basically trying to say that like it's up to members to decide amongst themselves what issues they want to fight on.
In the branches,
in branches. And as well as that, then we do kind of like collective like member defense work, which is where like if someone is facing a specific issue, whether to do with housing, we would get together and hold a meeting and decide what actions we want to take about that, right? Obviously primarily with like the consent and agreement of the person affected by it, but like with the support of the branch and then backed up by the union as a whole, but most directly supported by like people living in your area who you know and who you've come to know and see regularly, like through union meetings and so on.
I suppose that issue of safety and trust comes back into it again, that has come up so many times this evening.
Yeah. And then in dealing with any like proceeding with actions, I suppose that we might take to support people with housing problems, that is again all done collectively, like through the union, whether that's like negotiating with the landlord or trying to find ways of putting pressure on a landlord to resolve a situation. So like we operate with the principle of like generally along the lines of like collective direct action. So we will go together and take actions, right, to try and resolve these situations. So yeah, I guess it's all about like, understanding that the nature of the housing system individualizes people, puts them in very isolated situations where they're forced to like confront their landlord as a very lonely and precarious tenant at the mercy of this landlord. But we're trying to like gather our strength in numbers as people affected by the housing crisis and channel those energies productively into resolving people's issues.
Yeah, and that's something that struck me as you were speaking, the isolation and the isolation and frustration and just sheer desperation of somebody trying to deal with these issues on their own. And it's so powerful to think that there are other options out there and that there is that collective support available to you to face the dragon, I suppose, and try to deal with the issue. It's so important. Thank you for that. I'm looking at a question for Billy here. Billy, have you ever seen yourself being an activist before joining Justice for the Undocumented? Would you have described yourself as an activist before then?
No, never. I did not. So you see the Irish flag at the backside. So 2018, right before that was the St. Patrick's, and I bought this flag, and then that was my dream. One day I will get my regularization, and then I will honor this flag. So today, result. See, it's honored my flag, you know. I don't see as activism, but that was my dream, to become a documented.
Okay, you said you don't see it as activism. What do you see it as?
The struggle, okay. Hunger for the freedom that will make you activist.
Okay. So one leads into the other rather than starting out with the idea I'm an activist and I'm going to.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And there's another part to that question. Is how does it feel now to be finally paperised?
Absolutely. Wonderful.
I like that expression. Where did that expression come from? Paperised.
We had the one meeting, and then every meeting they end with the chant. It's like a struggle continues and victory is certain. So, and then they want me to do the close up the meeting, and then I says paperised, and it's like, what?
It's a good expression. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have. I think I've gone through all of the. And apologies if I've missed any comments in the chat that anyone put in. I think I've got to them all. But I'm going to ask another question now that I'm going to ask the panelists, and I'm going to open up I'm going to invite everyone that's online to post their response to this, if you want, into the chat. And I suppose the question is, what does active citizenship mean for you? So active citizenship, it means different things to everybody, but what does it mean to you individually? And has your ideas around, I suppose, for the chat, to make it easier, what does active citizenship mean for you? For the panelists, the same question to all three of you. And has that changed over time? Has that changed through your experiences of being active? So we'll go to Mavis first. What does active citizenship mean for you?
Thank you so much. Being an active citizen is to know that you are here in Ireland. It is your home. And it means part of you will learn and understand and take some of the culture or the rituals, to be part of you, to understand, and also to give yourself, to say, I am here, I have these skills, these abilities to change, to be part of the positive change to Ireland, and to engage with communities. As Ireland, as a country, we have issues. Besides us coming in as refugees, there are issues, there are challenges. To be an active citizen is to have knowledge. What is happening in my community? What are the worries? What are the struggles? Is it housing? Can I get involved? Be curious, being curious myself. That is why an end to direct provision is going to make us stronger together, because if there are issues in my community, I become part of that community. That's being an active citizen. Learn what is the local language. Like, for instance, if someone asks me now, 5 years or 6 years in Ireland, how are you? I'm grand. I don't say I'm fine, I'm grand, So that's being an active citizen. Engage, be part of the community. Give them a part of you, take a part of it. You cannot run away, from being part of a community. It's very, very important. For me, that is an active citizen, and highlight your own struggles. There is a word that some of my friends use. They always say, I am privileged, I am white, I don't understand the struggles. But being privileged, I was privileged, I was a citizen before. And that privilege is the best place and space you could be to be part of the change, because you are aware you are privileged. Doesn't mean when you are aware that I'm privileged, I live in a home, I have a car, I can afford, it means you're going to take a step back. No, use your privilege for the better of your own community and people that are now part of Ireland. So don't feel being privileged. It means, being around Mavis will think you are better. No, Mavis was also, remember, every refugee and international protection applicant was equally privileged as well. And I have been doing this work even back home. I was in an office bearer. Being an office bearer, I had some advantages. And I work with women from the DRC of Congo. And I made use of that offer to support them in my own time. So please know that privilege is an advantage that together we can make use of to change the society. So being an active citizen for me basically is to learn and understand. And as much as I'm always in the front about the refugee community, I'm also part of your struggle. If there's any way I could, like for instance, CATU, I'm part of CATU, and I always encourage anyone who has transitioned from direct provision. You have transitioned from direct provision, now you're gonna be renting, you will have challenges. Join CATU, be part of it so that the community know you exist. So when you have a challenge, don't start looking for support, build that support earlier. So that's what it means for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mavis. I think everybody needs Mavis on their marketing team and their membership drives. We will have to get you to come and work for us. Fia, what does active citizenship mean for you?
Yeah, I feel like I can't really follow Mavis's
sorry.
development of the concept. Yeah, I guess, like, to be honest, the citizenship side of that is not something that I have thought about a huge amount, which is maybe, a sign of like not have to think about it by being born in Ireland in that regard. So I guess it's a privilege in a sense. The active part of it, I'm certainly more comfortable with, and I have a sense of like what I would like to see in terms of like more activity and more activism or more involvement in organizing and so on. Like I think that just has to be trying to understand the struggles that are there and surround us in the world, of which there are many, and like becoming involved in those and contributing to them in whatever way we can, like using the energy and resources that we have, and trying to work with other people to like address those issues, right? Sorry, it's not very enlightening.
It's yours.
But yeah, it is.
And we all have very different, as I said at the start, we all have very different takes and ideas and definitions and understandings of what active citizenship is, and that's fine. That's okay. They're ours. Billy, what about you? What does active citizenship mean for you?
For me, it's easy. If you want to live happy, be active. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, every human being born with the warrior inside of them, and if you want to live your happy life, you have to chase your dream and take actions. So that means if any struggle comes and you find the people and together with you, and then you can just find a solution to solve it, that will make you happy.
Okay.
Everybody wants to live happy,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you all said something very similar there. You all said that you need to learn and you need to, that you need to go and do something. But it's not that, you know, somebody else has to come and do something for you. It's that you have to take the action and go and do something. And the other thing that was that struck out for me was using your privilege to be part of the change. You know, and it's interesting actually that you know, we, and I do it too. I understand active citizenship, and the citizenship, I suppose, part of that as in two ways. I understand it as being part of a community, a collective, you know, a sense of community and togetherness. But I also understand it as the legal part of it, you know, status, rights, that legal element of it. So the two bits, and the two bits are often at odds for me, because I don't necessarily like that I connect it with the status and the rights bit. I think it's something that everyone should have anyway, but it just is. But I think I like that about, you know, using your privilege as an asset, recognizing it as an asset, and sharing that asset with others is a really, really important point. And thank you for that. Let's have a look and see what our participants felt about it. Okay, so Blessing says it's collective liberation and radical change. Paul says it's very hard to say, but responsibility is definitely part of it. Responsibility to help, encourage, to speak up, to welcome, which very much resonates with what all three of you said. Being part of a struggle to bring about change. That's from Sandra. That's what active citizenship is for Sandra. Participating in society, being involved, engaged in the community, locally, and the wider community. From Emer to me, active citizenship means complaining in whatever non-violent way you can about the things in your society that seem unfair. Absolutely, I'll go with that one. If you keep complaining long enough, somebody has to listen. And as you have all so eloquently told us tonight, you know, collective complaining and amplifying that voice is definitely one way to do it, or the only way to do it, I think we've seen. From Steph, activism to me is a vehicle to develop my and others' critical consciousness, link our struggles, and tap into our collective power to bring about change. From Paula, for me, it's about acting in solidarity with others for a more equal world. Active citizenship is local, national, and global, and our responsibilities in these areas extend to everyone, not just to your personal or particular struggle. They're universal. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. For me, this is from Steph. For me, activism is at the heart of active citizenship. From Mel, we have active participation and interaction within and outside of the community, being productive, supportive, responsible, and working towards positive change. From Eilish, we have to be able to engage, resist, contribute, and be heard, to hold decision makers to account, and to be part of creating a better, more equal, just, safe, and thriving world. From Neve, we have being aware of your rights and those of others, then engaging with others, gain recognition and secure those rights, hold states and institutions to account. So I totally agree, accountability is a huge part of it. From Paula, it's part of a historical and ongoing movement, and while it's a cliche, we are all citizens of the world. Agreed. Making sure to pass the mic for the voiceless, and making sure there's enough seats at the table, at important tables, so that no one is dragging chairs from storage rooms. That's absolutely brilliant. I love that. Active citizenship from Hope. Active citizenship for me is to be able to participate in activities in society, having rights to third level education and the right to work, to be seen and to be heard. And I think we've come to the end of the comments on active citizenship. You know, there's lots that have come out of this tonight. And there's some key elements, I suppose, for me that just are sticking out about safe spaces, trust being hugely important. So that for active citizenship, we need to create those safe spaces. We need to build trust. We need to build strength. We need to build capacities. We need to hold people to account. And something that Mavis, that you said, is a phrase that you used was to be curious. You know, that we need to be curious. And somebody else in the comments actually mentioned not just about your own struggles, but everybody's struggles. To not just look inwards, but to look outwards and think, well, you know, okay, like you said, use your privilege as an asset and look outwards and see where you can use it as an asset, where it can be put to use. And I think that's us for the evening, folks. I think that wraps us up. And thank you very much. I'm going to offer my panelists the floor for any closing comments. Anything you'd like to add before we finish up for the evening? No?
I thought I'll leave the other panelists to start. I seem to be starting. No, from me, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone involved in putting this together today, and everyone who has joined us. There are grassroots organizations in Ireland. Let's do our best to fund the work that individuals like myself do. And this is not only in finance, but also in resources that will lift our voices. Let us work together. And also at the end of the day, you know, give ourselves a hug of a job well done. Even connecting in the space, somebody would have taken something. There's learning even for me to, you know, give ourselves a hug, because we have achieved so much as a nation. In the 6 years that I have been here in Ireland, I've seen the change. Let us continue to support each other, to support the grassroots organization beyond these discussions. And thank you for creating these platforms. They are very important for our voices, for the unity. Thank you for me.
Thank you very much, Mavis. Fia or Billy?
I have a request. Sorry.
Go on.
We can end this the meeting, and I can say Aluta continue. This is the story. And Aluta in Africa, they had this meeting. Struggle continues. One but says, and then the rest of the audience, they will say, "Victoria certa." That means victory is certain. Do you like that?
I do. It's wonderful. And when I hand over to Aga at the end, she can help you with that.
Yeah.
No pressure, Aga. We'll come to you in 1 second, Aga. Just Fia, to give Fia the opportunity to add a final comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, Anil, for having us on. And if anyone wants to know more about CATU, you can find it on catuireland.org. And I really encourage people to have a look and consider joining and getting involved in your community, in your struggles in your area, I suppose.
Thank you, Fia. And thank you to all three of you. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you this evening. It was really insightful and inspirational for me, and I'm sure for everybody else. And just for everyone out there, you know, if you do have that little bit of privilege, whether it's financial or otherwise, support Cooking for Freedom and Justice for the Undocumented and CATU and COLAF. And get involved and be an active citizen. Strength in numbers is, you know, we need to raise those voices and resist. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand you back to Aga.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really impressed by, you know, by your spirits. It's just so positive, you know, like you wouldn't say that you're all involved in very heavy topics. And, you know, I think, you know, it's just really uplifting for me just to see that you keep your spirits high. And, you know, as well with Billy and Justice for Undocumented, it shows that, you know, the struggle can be won, you know, that the battles can be won, and it's worth it, you know, and hopefully we'll see this, the end of direct provision soon, with such a victory like JFU had, and also the end of housing crisis. So, you know, thank you very much for what you're doing, and you know, for all your hard work, and I hope that people will get involved. And just for the participants, I want to thank you very much for your comments. I will actually put them all in one little document, and I will share them because I think it's very inspiring, you know, for activizing people. So it will be like, I will post it on social media, but without your name, so don't worry. But I think it's really good. I really love your quotes, what active citizenship means to you. And I will also send you a follow-up information in a couple of days with links to all the campaigns and all the groups that were here today. And I would ask you to support them, whether financially or join them, share their message, get involved. And, you know, even if you are not interested in those movements, join in other movements, join in something that is important to you. And I would like to invite you as well to the next 2 sessions of the first Wednesdays that we will have on first Wednesday of November and December as well, looking at different aspects of this topic and of the 3 parts of the series. And thank you very much, and good night. And thank you for bearing with us. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aga.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Julia. Thank
Night.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Gloria Certa.